How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we have so much to get into in this Big Mets update segment, February 14th, 2025. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. And I know that you guys are probably cuddled up with your partners, or if you guys are riding solo, that's fine, because we're here to talk baseball at the end of the day, right? So let's get into this Big Mets update segment where we're going to be deep diving all the latest on the Dylan Cease trade talks, because yes, the Mets are still involved, and yes, the Mets are among the most heavy suitors for Dylan Cease, one looking to acquire the talented arm for the San Diego Padres. So we'll get into where exactly that reporting stems from, what the Padres are currently asking, including key prospect names that we're going to deep dive here in a second, along with the Padres are looking for a bat. Could Starling Marte find himself in that fold, as well as all the key takeaways from Port St. Lucie today, WardyNYM, Mark Vientos, and plenty more. Thank you guys so much for smashing that like and subscribe on as you first chime in, letting me know your initial reactions in the comments down below, and shout out to our amazing sponsor that plenty of you guys know on the platform here at BetUS, which has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Head over to betus.com.pa today and use Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way YouTube will get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, a 125 on your second or third, up to $2,000 for whatever you want to bet on. And folks, it is fight night tomorrow for UFC at the time of recording this one, and I'm absolutely loving my two-leg parlay right now. I have Gregory Rodriguez, who is in the main event fight there against Jared Cannonier. I like Jared Cannonier a lot, but he's 40 years of age versus Rodriguez being 32. And while age gaps usually aren't a huge difference maker in each UFC fight, this one stands out to me as Cannonier has lost his past couple fights against good competition and is not getting any younger versus a Mr. Gregory Rodriguez, who's still on the rise a bit in his UFC career. And then we have Ketlin Souza, who's making her UFC debut there against Amanda Hill, and I love this matchup for her because Amanda is 17-14 in her UFC career, whereas someone like Souza only has 4 or 5 career professional losses. So I like that matchup. Also a decade younger, her opponent is 40 and she's 30, so I like these matchups here, everybody. This is going to be a $30 parlay that can win me a total of $62.90. Should you guys tail this, please know I'm not a sports betting expert, just a diehard sports fan, including UFC, NFL, MLB, obviously NFL there, and plenty others, NHL, you name it. We got you covered with all sports bets here. Bet responsibly, but make sure you do it with our awesome friends here at BetUS. Now, folks, as we hop back into this one, let's get into what's happening with Dylan Cease. And it first stems from an article that came out over the past day or so from John Heyman of the New York Post. So I implore you guys to check that out in case you guys haven't already, because in said piece it goes on to break down what is the current trade demands from AJ Preller and what is the current status of Dylan Cease even being traded so far this offseason. As we know, Dennis Lin, who is a writer of The Athletic and one of the main beat guys there for the Padres, came out with a piece just a day plus ago stating how it appears likely that Cease and Michael Cain will remain with the Padres. Well, fast forward just a day later, and it's led to believe that that might not only not be the case, but there is still a great reality where Dylan Cease is traded this year, whether that is before the season begins or by the trade deadline. Everything is still aligning to make this happen. And in this article, John Heyman goes on to state that the Mets are among the most consistent suitors when pursuing Mr. Dylan Cease of the San Diego Padres. And we have beaten this drum plenty over the past couple weeks on the platform, but in case you guys have been living under a rock, let me enlighten you. Dylan Cease is one of the better pitchers out of all available pitchers in the National League. He's coming off of a tremendous season and is potentially one and done year in San Diego with the Padres after he was acquired by them right around the middle of March. So it's not like Cease can't be traded there as we get into spring training. It certainly can happen. It feels like there's a reality where that may still happen if both teams can reach in the middle on a price point. And Cease's cost is a lot, and we'll get into that shortly. But as you guys can see right here, in 190 innings, a 3.47 ERA, a 3.31 expected ERA, over 200 strikeouts, a chef's kiss 10K per nine to right around at 3 walks per nine there. You look at the numbers throughout his career, lively fastball that we know that sits 97 to 100, a breaking ball that's one of my favorite curves in the game. You have so much when you have a guy like Dylan Cease and what he can immediately impact for this Mets team. And we all know that the Mets rotation doesn't look bad heading into the season by any stretch, but there's still a guy short, you could argue. They're an ace caliber starter short, and that's where Dylan Cease comes into play. On the final year of his roughly $14 million hit for the Padres, and a Padres team has very little money to spend, this is why we are in these heavy trade talks right now. Because even though that, again, yes, Dennis Lin on the beat for the Padres reported the other day that it doesn't appear likely. Well, things change, especially when there is a complete flux when you look at the ownership of the Padres. Right now, currently running the team as active owner is the brother of Peter Seidler, the late obviously, brother Peter, rest in peace to Peter. Again, goes without saying, I've beat that drum plenty too. One of the best owners in the game up until his passing. But now with that 91-page lawsuit where Seidler's widowed wife is suing his biological brothers on control of the team, and really a lot of bad things going on there, they have such little dollars to work with, which is why they had to sway Nick Pivetta to say, hey, we're only going to give you a $1 million base salary this year for a total up for the $4 or $5 million with a bonus. But because we're going to ink you for 4 years where you have player opt-outs after each year, we hope that that'll be enough to sway you. And it was for Nick Pivetta, adding to that rotation. And while the Padres can roll into 2025 when Nick Pivetta in their rotation, Cease and Kane and no one dealt, there is obviously a reason as to why Cease can not only be traded, but as John Heyman alludes to, they might have their hand forced whether they like it or not. Because AJ Preller, as persuasive as he can certainly be as an aggressive GM, there's only so much he can do if ownership is saying, listen, we need to continue to cut payroll. This is just how it is, and we should maximize the return on a rental piece like Dylan Cease. And maximizing that return has been the big reason as to why he has not been traded yet, because the current ask, according to John Heyman of the New York Post, is guys like Luis Angel Acuna, Brandon Sproat, who we all know we don't want to trade. That's our top pitching prospect that we broke down a video yesterday. Check it out in case you guys haven't already on the platform. But then you also have guys like Nolan McLean, who really rise there through the minor leagues this past year. No longer a hitter and a pitcher, Nolan McLean, from when they first drafted him. Solely a pitcher, but he has a lot of upside, as well as Jonathan, who absolutely skyrocketed through the minors, like Brandon Sproat and similarity this past season. But when I look at that mix of players especially, we know that the Padres have been reportedly looking for right around 3 top 25 prospects, and that's a steep price for a rental, which is exactly why, again, a trade hasn't happened. It has been met. But if a trade is going to happen, the Mets have been one of the heaviest pursuers, one of the heaviest suitors pursuing Cease so far this offseason, and that appears to continue. And the fact that the Mets have been so active and so heavily involved in his market tells me that even as a rental, the Mets certainly like Dylan Cease, and they know how much upside he'd bring them in this win now stage. And for AJ Preller and the Padres, if your hands are really tied in force, then that's where the Mets can certainly come into play and give you maybe not exactly what you're asking for, but we can reach in the middle. So instead of asking for an Acuna, a Sproat, and a Nolan McLean type or a Jonathan, have it be one of those prospects in that mix. Hopefully the McLean-Ton types versus the Sproat-Acuna types. But I don't want Ton. Honestly, out of that entire mix, Nolan McLean is the guy I'd be most easy to stomach dealing with as a prospect. All of them at the end of the day, I'm not going to lose too much sleep knowing how good Dylan Cease is and knowing how much he can immediately impact this rotation. Dylan Cease can easily be one of the main factors for your rotation as to why you go on a true World Series run this year with Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos that we'll get into a little bit, Pete Alonso, and everyone else in company. So the asking price is still high when we look at this Padres team, but the fact that the Mets have not wavered from their consistent pursuit of the player is telling that they're going to hope that that price continues to drop. Same way that they did with Pete Alonso's price point continuing to drop. Same way that Jose Iglesias is reportedly planning to meet with the Mets as soon as this weekend, where his price point may drop even on a one-year deal. The Mets are playing the game the way that they want to play it right now, and that's exactly why they've had such a tremendous offseason to this point. If you land an ace-caliber starter like Dylan Cease, it's hard to not grade this as a complete slam dunk A-plus offseason for the Mets if you haven't given them that grade already. Now, guys, going from Dylan Cease, let's get into another option here, and that is more so on what the Padres could do and potentially adding a bat, because as we know, and that was reported actually just over this past day, yes, the Padres are looking for another bat, everybody, even though that they have literally pennies to spend at the moment, they're looking for more. So even though that they brought in guys like Jason Hayward and Connor Joe to pretty much get reps there, the corner outfield DH, Connor Joe is a San Diego native, so that made a lot of sense too for him to go there, but they're looking for another hitter, and they have very limited options right now. Their DH has anything but power from the platoon that they're toying with at the moment, and the Padres are a team that's looking both the free agent and trade market, and there's been a guy that we talked about for a decent amount now as to, okay, maybe the Mets could trade him, and that's Starling Marte. And in this piece from MLB Trade Rumors in particular, it goes on to note how Starling Marte, again, could be of interest for the Padres, and we actually broke that down over this past week in a separate video on how a Marte for Wandy Peralta trade could happen, as that was proposed by our good friend, the platform Mets beat reporter Pat Ragazzo. And in case you guys don't know Wandy Peralta, mind you, the Mets were actually a finalist for Wandy last offseason before he signed a 4-year, $12 million deal there for the Padres. Too many years for a reliever having a down year the way they did this past year, but it makes sense because, again, low AAV, but longer term, that's the AJ Preller and Padres way, trying to stretch that payroll as much as they can. A sub-4 ERA this past season, but the expected numbers weren't great. For the first time in his career, Wandy Peralta couldn't get lefties out the way that you'd expect to get him out as a lefty specialist, and that was his his demise pretty much from the start to finish there in San Diego with the Padres. But the Mets, who can rekindle that relationship with Wandy and Mets assistant pitching coach from the Yankees this past year, and Desi Driscoll, they worked together a year plus ago with the Yankees organization. Carlos Mendoza would rekindle that relationship. Clay Holmes, the rest is history. And by bringing in a guy like Wandy Peralta, this would have a true lefty option separate from AJ Minter to keep AJ Minter more of the high leverage situations always, whether you're facing righty or lefty batters, and then for Wandy Peralta to be more of your lefty specials and in that limited role, not so much high leverage every time. I think that would bode well for Peralta, who labored a bit and fluctuated throughout the course of this past season. A high ground ball rate type pitcher, so definitely profiles similar to another pitcher the Mets tried hard to land in Tim Hill before he went back to the Yankees that Desi Driscoll worked with plenty. So especially lefty, crafty lefties that are working on their ground ball game, true ground ball pitchers. That's what the Mets like, and that's exactly why Wandy Peralta, I'm sure, is on the radar at least to a degree. I don't love the multiple years that he still has. He still has another 2-3 years of control, but at a $4 million AAV with opt-outs that we have seen, it isn't out of the realm of possibility that maybe the Mets will consider a Wandy Peralta trade and maybe something else in a Sterling Marte deal where they give Marte, pretty much have him there, eat a portion of his contract, so that way they are not handling his roughly $20 million, because Padres want to bring in a batter, but only for pennies. They don't want to bring in a guy if they have to deal with that inflated salary. Mets don't salary dump Marte, but at the same time, if the Mets are going to trade Marte, then they need to make sure it makes sense, because while they have plenty of outfield depth, all it takes is one Brandon Nimmo injury and one other thing to happen before you know, we're deferring to guys strictly out of AAA, and that's something that you don't want to do. So I'm all about having depth, and I don't want to trade Marte just for the sake of trading him, but if it's of something that could be of more value for the Mets, as the Mets have reportedly tried seeking a reliever like Hunter Harvey from the Royals, pretty much a younger Ryan Stanek, before the Mets brought back Ryan Stanek, is a way that a trade here, not this time for Hunter Harvey, but more so for a guy like Wandy Peralta, might be able to get the job done for a veteran with a lot of years of experience in New York, knows what it takes to win in high leverage situations and playoff experience. Wandy Peralta has it all, so don't be shocked if you see something like that brought up again before the season begins, especially in the Padres' current pursuit of trying to add a batter there, everybody. But now let's go from talking about Wandy Peralta and all these trade rumors and trade talks, and I certainly enjoy them. I'm going to miss them throughout the year, because while I love Mets baseball, I love rumor talk too. I want Vladimir Guerrero Jr. already, as we're going to get those talks going throughout the year, as we always do. But now, folks, let's pivot into talking a bit more on what's also happening in Mets land. Not so much this time with our guy Wandy, and if I could find just his stat bar to minimize, there we go, fantastic. Let's get into what's happening now with everyone else, right? Because what we saw is Brandon Nimmo spoke to the media today, and there's one key thing from Brandon Nimmo in particular that I'd like to share with you guys. That comes courtesy of our guy Anthony Como and Tim Healy. So Brandon Nimmo, plantar fasciitis, says he's gotten up to 91% in his running progression, which is measured against his previous top speed. He's going to take things slow this spring, but Nimmo continues to believe he'll make up for that missing 9% before opening day. When asked about potentially playing at the DH position, Nimmo said, yeah, it's possible, but he's really not expecting that to happen as long as his ramp up continues the way that it's been. Plantar fasciitis derailed Brandon Nimmo heavily in the second half last season, which was really unfortunate because he had one of the best first halves I've ever seen for Brandon, especially when looking at power. The guy was tremendous. Remember, Brandon Nimmo was helping carry the way for this Mets offense with guys like Mark Vientos when others, including Lindor, was doing nothing in the first month and a half of the season in 2024. But Nimmo is very excited. He spoke some glowing words on rekindling that relationship with Juan Soto, in which they met and actually worked out together a bit in 2022 with Scott Boras and his entire group when everything was going on there. But now we see Brandon Nimmo's locked and loaded and ready to go for the season. And he's rocking a beard too, which I like. So we'll see if he rocks it all year long. Ronnie Mauricio, that I forgot to mention, but I'm going to mention it now, did have himself a really nice day there at BP, hitting bombs from both the left and right side of the plate. A lot of high optimism and expectations for Ronnie this year, who will not be getting into game action in spring training until the earliest mid-March. So be on the lookout for that when it comes to Ronnie. We also did see some other keynotes today, including our guy Blade Tidwell, one of our top pitching prospects, sadly drilling our top infield prospect in Jet Williams. There is Jet running away. Thankfully, Williams is okay, but he definitely got hit pretty hard there. So we'll come back. We'll, throughout the course of spring trading, make note of how many Mets on Mets crimes are happening right now. Because Blade, love you, buddy, but let's not hit Jet Williams. He just got back from his wrist injury this past year. Last thing we need is for more bad things there, right? I think that goes without saying, at least in my opinion, and the opinions of some out here. But let's refresh this puppy real quick, because I did want to see, I do have some other notes I have for you guys, especially on the Vientos front, among others, so just bear with me 1 second. We also did see guys like Francisco Alvarez from earlier today hitting absolute tanks, guys. He hit a bomb off the scoreboard. I know it's not like impossible for these guys. This is, again, just an everyday thing for them, but just chef's kiss. I'm so excited for Alvarez and that new swing that we broke down with our videos yesterday. JD Martinez helped this man in more ways than one. I'll leave you with that. Jeff McNeil's back, everybody. The hits god, at least looking back to the 2022 season, maybe not so much now, but McNeil is looking happy and looking ready and looking to have a fast start to spring training, knowing he has heavy competition with a lot of infield options for the Mets, not even named Jose Iglesias that they may still bring back. And Jeff, obviously, who had a really good down the stretch in 2024, coming back outside of his injury, pushed north of a 900 OPS. So he was back to more of the old Jeff up until his injury that, went into there in the postseason for the most part. But McNeil, he said it himself on record over the past couple weeks that he needs a fast start to spring training. He feels like that's the best way for him to be locked in and start the year sharp the way that he wants to versus how he's derailed the past couple years. And I would agree with him when it comes to that. But McNeil now with more competition than ever when looking at this Mets roster, you can clearly tell that he's feeling that a little bit. And hopefully that's the best for him and for this Mets team, as obviously they're not having current intent of trading Jeff at this point in time, mainly because when you have $30+ million connected to a guy that is a high contact hitter that hasn't been hitting for high contact consistently the past couple years, you're going to have a very limited demand for said player. Even though he's versatile, the Mets have their outfield options, and we know that plenty. There was Brandon Nimmo, as I alluded to from earlier, just saying exactly what I said about him and that beard. And again, I like the beard. I think it looks good on him. I really do. Now let's go down here. Also, the Mets have the top 2 out of MLB's top 100 Latin players in all of the MLB, which is so sick to see. And hopefully they'll be adding that man Vladdy, so they'll have 3 out of the 5 after the 2025 season. If you know, you know. But all semi-jokes aside, folks, we also saw Ryan Clifford hitting some absolute tanks there. One of our top prospects there on the offensive front that we acquired for Justin Verlander. For those that don't recall, he was a late round draft pick, but skyrocketed right away in the minor leagues for the Astros in his first year. Was dominant for us last year. Not going to hit too high in the contact, but the guy has Kyle Schwarber vibes all over it. It's sluggy machine. I think this guy's 30+ home run potential at the MLB level. I'm very confident in that. Now let's get on to our guy, Marky V, Swaggy V, Daddy V, however you want to call him, and Mark Vientos. Mark is having an awesome start to spring training that we're seeing, and there's some key remarks that he shared with the media today that I really want to emphasize with each and every one of you. We saw both Brett Beatty and McNeil taking their grounders today. Beatty got some reps at first base today, which was interesting to see. But there is also Dice K with Kodai Senga as he stopped by there, which was really cool. Port St. Lucie earlier today, former Met, as we know. Alrighty, folks, now let's hear some key remarks from our guy, Mark Vientos, who spoke to the media today after another great day there at spring training.
What would it mean to get to the World Series?
Everything. That's everything, honestly. The way we ended last year and the mentality I went to in this offseason is to get to the World Series, and I want to win it all for sure. I think that's everybody's goal that's in here, is to win the World Series. So
couldn't agree more, Mark.
Mark, last year you showed how important you were to this lineup. What do you need to do to take the next step?
I think it's just see the game within the game. Just slow the game a little bit more down. I think last year I was trying to solidify myself, trying to prove myself. So like I said, I was going at 100 miles an hour. I think now we slow it down a little bit and see the game within the game.
Yeah, Vientos obviously was competing for that spot hard last year to be an everyday MLB player. He solidified that and then some, and now it's really a question on, is he going to hit 30 home runs? Is he going to hit 40 home runs in a full 162? And that feels really, really good to say. The Mets have a true slugging third baseman for the first time since David Wright.
Mark, what is it going to be like playing with Juan Soto?
It's sick. It's sick because there's a lot of guys on this team that I grew up watching.
Context. Mark Vientos is a year younger than Juan Soto, yet he's been watching Juan in the league because he's been in the league since he's like 18, 19 years of age. Is that crazy? Literally like a guy he idolizes and looks up to, and mind you, they're pretty much neck and neck on age. It's crazy.
And now I'm in the same lineup as them, and we can argue that we're one of the top lineups in baseball, and just to be a part of the lineup is awesome, especially with guys like Soto and Pete. It's amazing.
The confidence is oozing out of this guy, and we heard David Stearns reaffirm that yesterday, speaking to the media, that we broke down a little bit. Check it out in case you guys haven't already over the past day. But Vientos, after thriving there in all high leverage situations that we saw, this guy's locked and loaded, and he's ready. Also went on to say, you know, how excited he is to play at Citi Field this year, how much he appreciates the fans, and that has all the fans, including myself, all juiced up and hyped up, be screaming Mark Vientos' name there at Citi Field while he hits a 3-run tank against the Phillies to give us, what, a 7-2 lead or whatever it's going to be. I can't wait for the year Mark Vientos in this deep lineup, especially with Juan Soto now. Guys, this is going to be a very exciting year to say the least. But that's going to do it for our latest Big Mets Updates segment. But actually, I lied. Before I go, I do have one more clip that I want to show you guys. This isn't relevant to the actual, you know, the team right now, as it's more relevant to just the change of the Mets. And this comes courtesy of Rich Eisen. If you guys don't know Rich Eisen, he has been a major NFL and sports talking head, has his own show that he does daily for the most part, and he had a comedian, New Yorker as well, Chris DiStefano on recently, and Chris was breaking down the treatment with how the Mets have treated him versus how the Yankees have, and I think this is notable. I think this is a prime example of exactly on how the culture shift is continuing to favor the Mets and having the Yankees on the back seat.
You have emotional scars.
I do.
Okay, and I understand that, which makes sense that you would have some sort of a delusional sense that you can choose between neither the Mets and the Yankees when it's all said and done, that you root for New York, like, you know, you're handing out pamphlets outside of Empire State Building, you know, and all that sort of stuff. You have to choose between one or two. I'm sorry,
But
Chris.
the thing is,
And I understand that you're friends with Steve Cohen. By the way, that would make me a Mets fan on the spot.
Right.
He's a very rich man. He's very influential.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Right away, if you were friends with them, and then the Yankees start, like, you know, kind of treating me like a second-class citizen, then it becomes personal. And here's the other thing that happened. You ready for this?
Sure.
I go on the field, right, with the Mets, owner, family. They bring me on the Yankees-Mets, right? Me in Yankee Stadium. I'm a guest of the Mets. Beautiful thing on the field. Love it. I'm with my stepson, big baseball fan. We're having a good time.
Yes.
My stepson goes and tries to, you know, put his hands on the dirt. Right? Hand in the dirt. Nice. Right? The Yankees security sprints over and starts screaming at my stepson, like in his face, to the point where I was like, you're this close to getting freaking 1-2. You can't talk to him like that.
How old is he?
13. And then the Cohen family, who I was with, were like, hey.
Imagine being a security guard and having the cojones to think that, oh, I'm going to go scream at a 13-year-old over time. Like, I get it. There's rules. And I know that the Yankees are the most stubborn organization in Major League Baseball, and making sure that every single hair on the top of their head is positioned a certain way, making sure that every single hair follicle that could be on their face is plucked and out of there unless you have a little mustache going. I understand that they're the old school way, but here's the thing. Old school is not today's school. Today's school is what the Mets are doing, and there's a big difference.
You know, it's okay. Like, we're the owner's family in the Mets. And then the security guard starts yelling at them. And I said, what the hell? So the Cohen family then, because, you know, my stepson was upset, they gave him a jar of dirt from Citi Field, and they said, this is for you. So I said, so now it's personal. So now it's personal. And then I got to be honest with you, and this is just, I don't have any proof of this, but do you know in the rumors when Juan Soto signed with the Mets over the Yankees, and there was a rumor over there that said there was a security guard that disrespected. I guarantee you, if it was this guy, the way that this guy got in our face, I was like, bro, you are close right now. I mean, you're so. I might backhand you.
I think you learned the hard way.
Right.
The only 13-year-old who's allowed to touch the Yankee Stadium mound dirt is Danny Almonte when he was really 16.
Wow. Yes,
you know what I mean? Like, that's the only 13-year-old.
Or Jeffrey Marr when he's reaching over and stealing a home run. That's right. Yeah.
Damn.
There you go. So Rich Eisen, a notorious Yankees fan who was beyond butthurt when Juan Soto chose the Mets over the Yankees. And you can clearly tell that the shift is continuing the Mets direction. Same thing with the media as well. Have you guys not picked that up on MLB socials and everywhere else? They usually try their best to boast the Mets and then tear them down by midseason, but not so much this time around. You can clearly tell that with Soto, with Cohen, they know how marketable the Mets are continuing to become. So the MLB is going to maximize that. And it means that while, yes, the Mets are going to continue to thrive, it also is going to be become a greater divide in New York and viewing who's big brother, who's little brother. Yanks will always be big brother when we base it on history. We know that. But when we talk about now, when we talk about how things have been and how they will continue to be, it's hard to not be very optimistic about the Mets being the ones to lead the pack between the two when looking at great baseball for hopefully not only 2025, but for at least the next decade to come. So guys, that'll officially conclude our Big Mets update segment. Thank you so much again. Well, please let me know your key takeaways in the comments down below on it all. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.